What's up, guys? This week, me and Jordan talked about just questions from the week, questions that people sent in. I put some in there. It was wonderful. We talked about everything from foundational things to live by to what would it look like if Jesus came back. I loved it. I hope you guys do too. Like, follow, share, all the things. Have a great day. Bye for now. Hello.
I think we fixed it, Jan.
Oh, welcome back to the podcast. The podcast where we ask Jordan questions. It's very complicated. Mr. Jordan Weaver, how are you? Good?
Top of the evening to you.
You have a good day?
I am. You know what? I'm actually getting to where I look forward to Mondays for these.
Really?
Uh-huh.
That's great.
Yep.
The topic of today is questions from the week. So I just compiled a couple of them, and we'll go through those. And this is a good opportunity if you guys have questions. There's no overarching topic of, prayer or so on and so forth. And so you guys just shoot any questions. Just
That's the other
away.
thing that I like is that we know that it's impossible to think that one, like Sunday mornings, for instance, like if it's an in-person conversation, it goes on and
Right.
and there's no way to get to everybody.
Right.
There's no way to answer questions. Like this format, what's so cool, if you're wondering like why we do this format allows conversation to take place that's interactive,
Right.
that most pastors don't get.
Yeah.
You got that little window of time, like on a Sunday morning. And so for us to be able to do something like this, to me, feels like I feel guilty for the people that I don't get to make contact with.
Well, and how often do you have a conversation with somebody in person and then you're like, man, I know so many people that conversation would benefit, but it just went into thin air after that person's ears.
Yep.
So it's cool to be able to ask them on here. So the first one, you ready to just dive into it?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
What would the proof of evolution disprove God?
Okay. I can tell you've been talking to John.
Yeah.
So one of the things that people ask me is like, hey, if you believe the Bible, what do you do with science? Like that instantly somehow science is out the window. And my point is that I think that the Bible validates science, and science, we keep validating the Bible with science. And that if, in my opinion, that's the big one, is evolution. Here's my answer to that. The debate, if you guys are keeping up, the debate is the earth billions of years old? Is it millions of years old? Or is it, the Bible indicates that like the story that is found in the Bible is about 6,000 year time period. So creationists go to, okay, hey, what's up, Levi Wolf, who's traveling somewhere between here
Levi.
and wherever he's at. The first miracle that Jesus did in his ministry, I think we've talked about this, you might have ever even heard it.
Right.
The first miracle that he did was he turned water into wine at the wedding. And there's so many times that the Bible is just dimensional and layered, and this ties to this, ties to this, ties to this, and there's just formats and patterns. And so the first thing that he did was he turned water into wine. That was the very first miracle that he did. Well, wine people know that one of the most important ingredients to the process of making wine is time. Like the older it gets, the better it gets. And so then he turns water into wine, and then they come back and they go, this is the best wine at the whole wedding. Right. Usually people serve their best stuff at the front and save the worst stuff for the last, and you've done the opposite.
Right.
So what that means is he made something old instantly.
Okay.
And that's just a detail that gets skipped over. But in the creation process, if we're believing that God is who he says he is and he speaks things into existence, to me, it makes perfect sense that it's almost a wink to the idea of creation, that God created something old in an instant. Now, you go to like people who talk about the space and time continuum, things like that, and like, how do we know that time is even a thing? And then you get into this minutia of like, how do you know anything has ever happened?
Right.
How do you know that your memory wasn't planted and that everything that you remember isn't even real? Yeah, I mean, you can go down all sorts of weird rabbit holes, and that's not what I'm doing. I'm suggesting that if I can imagine the ability of God to create something old in an instant, that it doesn't seem that impossible that he could have created an entire evolutionary process in a moment, that we now, through science, we can discover what that would have looked like had it been all played out.
Right.
But, I mean, I don't think one disagrees with the other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially the more science that we find and the more that we understand it, I think it's an interesting way to sort of
to me,
unpack
it shows a beautiful artist in whichever way you look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. In today's society, what does it look like to build your house on a good foundation? that part of the Bible where it's like, build your house on a good foundation. What are some, I don't know, things to live by?
You're not going to like my answer, but tell me your exam. Tell me what you think. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Man, this is not how the show works. I mean, to me, it's faith, because when you have that, it kind of lays the groundwork for the complexity after that.
Well, the thing that I see about sand is that it shifts. The wind blows and it moves. The water comes across it and it moves. Like right now in Texas, they've got the Saharan desert sand.
Yeah.
Now, here's what's crazy about that. That actually fertilizes plankton throughout the ocean. I mean, it's a cool process, but it moves. Circumstances hit and it moves this way. Circumstances hit sand and it moves that way. And what you see is that it exposes rock around it. You know, Central Oregon, we see this all the time. And so if God says to build your house on the rock, what that means is circumstances don't have the effect on the rock that it does on the sand. So how many people are watching right now? Is anybody going to watch this?
43.
How we are building a lot on the sand right now with our culture.
Okay.
Because there is so much inner hypocrisy to the narrative in the streets right now.
Okay.
I was listening to a podcast and it said, right now we've got all lives matter and Black lives matter.
Okay.
And you go, well, can either one of them be wrong? Can either one of them be right? Within that is such hypocrisy, because if I say all lives matter, aren't I saying Black lives matter? And if Black lives matter, doesn't that mean also that's included under all lives matter? And so we're creating hidden subsurface arguments with each other by saying, well, I say this, well, I say that. What we're doing is we're disguising the sand that says you're not woke enough. Well, you're not complicit enough. Well, you're too complicit. You're not this and that. And so what we do is we're building our social structure on the sand right now.
Right.
And so when the Bible talks about things like forgiveness is rock solid. It is rock solid because you have determined before anything ever happens, you've determined that forgiveness is going to happen. So circumstances come in and you're not losing your personal resolve. Okay. But what we now find is like, it puts the end to a lot of arguments. There's a lot of things that would go nuclear that instead sort of fizzle out because God has said, and you said it with faith, build your life and your decisions on the persuasion that God is who God says he is, and you're not going to be so affected by the circumstances of the day.
Right.
I don't think I clarified my Black Lives Matter, all lives matter thing, but then if somebody were to go, okay, you can't say all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter. I agree. I don't think someone should say all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter because it sounds like an argument.
Yeah.
And I don't think that somebody should say Black Lives Matter in response to all. I think both statements can be true. Now they've started there's a new hashtag just for the sake of conversation. Please understand, I'm not getting too far into the weeds. They've now started a hashtag that says Black trans lives matter. So what if somebody were to go, all Black lives matter? You see what I mean?
Okay.
You see how quickly the circumstances are just shifting to the point that it's like, hey, I've got to have something solid that is not affected by 2020, that's not affected by 1824, that's not affected. Like, what is eternal that I can build my house on so that as circumstances come and go, as the social narrative changes, I'm saying I'm leaning into a relationship with people the best I understand based on my love for God.
Right.
See, because like as people, we can make everything so confusing.
Right. So is there a passage in the Bible that you look to of like kind of those staple rock solid things?
There's the Beatitudes. We're in the series right now about the fruits of the Spirit. And the fruits of the Spirit are, what should my life look like if it's planted on the rock? What should my spiritual life be producing? Love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, I think is what they are. Yeah. But it's almost, you also have to look at the effect. And when Galatians, it says that what it's saying is like, this is your gauge. This is what you should be experiencing to some degree. It's not a rule. It doesn't say go do these things. Right. It says, are you seeing these things? Yeah. Because if these are a result instead of a rule, that means I've got my foundation right on the rock so that I'm not blown around. And that's kind of, I think, when I feel like philosophy is kind of bouncing around in my head, but when they were on the boat and the waves were going, Jesus was establishing himself by calming the waves, he's establishing himself as the rock. And he's going, you guys, you don't understand, like the waves cannot have an effect on the rock.
I see.
So no matter what you see, no matter what you're experiencing, I am. They go, who are you? He goes, I am that I am. And that's what that answer in my mind means, is that Jesus is that rock. Can we jump to that question real quick?
Sure.
When a sheep strays, the shepherd leaves the majority because the one sheep is in danger, right? That doesn't mean the rest of the sheep don't matter. True. That's exactly right. That's exactly right, Shiloh. And I think if I were to say that, I'm frustrated right now with the ambiguity of the arguments
Okay.
of 2020, right? That if you don't wear a mask, Lincoln City, can I just give you an example?
Okay.
Lincoln City says masks are important. They save lives.
Okay.
Okay. But if you're a person of color, you don't have to wear them. Well, now, wait a minute. Aren't you putting their lives in danger if masks are what they say they are? Yeah, but racism. Okay, hold on. I want to know that the principles, the guiding principles of my life based in who Jesus were, drives me to compassion for people, drives me to compassion for systems that are unfair. The Bible lists unfair scales as one of the things that God hates. So if there's a system that is unfairly disadvantaging someone, I should hate that too. It should matter to me. I can't just look at it and go, that doesn't matter. But when you start trying to parse it out amongst people, like I'm gonna make a rule for this, and I'm gonna make a rule for that, and I'm gonna make a rule for this, you're basing it in rules. Rules are sand, because then every time you build a rule, somebody's gonna come in and try to make a different rule. Well, what about this loophole? What about that? Love is a foundation that's rock, because it compels us to go beyond what the rules require.
Interesting.
I feel like I'm kind of talking all over the place. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense in my mind. If my constitution is built on who Jesus was, it compels me to more than whatever kind of a rule or system we could create.
Well, I love to think about future-proofing things. So, for instance,
Future-proofing like that.
So if I'm getting gear for media and so on, I try at least to get as much gear that can grow with the advance of technology and so on and so forth. So, for instance, if it was like, okay, staples, to live on, if it was like, don't lie or something like that. Well, what if a drug comes along, or a computer that you put in your brain that like turns that off, or society gets to a point where it's like, you don't even have to worry about that anymore for some reason. You can just tell if somebody's lying. Well, then it's like, okay, well now I have to redo the staples of my life. I mean, that seems it needs to be like things that do not move.
Yeah. And if Jesus, it says that Jesus was the same yesterday, today, and forever. And if that's the case, that means whatever I build my life around according to who he was, and according to what he suggests, then it means there's not a time where that's irrelevant. There might be a time where it's more comfortable, less comfortable. There may be a time where it costs more. I know there are people that have followed Jesus and it's cost them everything. So I can't establish cost or comfort as my principle, because people are driven by comfort. That's sand, and the circumstances come and they change, and all of a sudden you built your whole life on comfort, and your comfort's gone and you don't have anything left. But if I can build it on Jesus, then Jesus says I can sustain you through the process regardless of what the circumstances do. There's never a time where who Jesus isn't enough of a foundation for my life theory, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Did Jesus drink alcohol? That came in.
I'm not going to misquote this. I'm going to read it. I'm going to give you some things to think about.
Look it up. Yeah.
They say he took a Nazarite, and that he was a Nazarite. Is that right? Do you know the answer to this?
Was he a Nazarite?
Well, let me just answer this.
Okay. Yeah. Take time.
I'm going to read it because I don't want to get this one. Let me answer this one. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
It says that he turned water into wine. And I think that I've got friends who struggle with alcoholism.
Right.
And I think that is their ultimate justifier. Like, Jesus drank wine.
Right.
Even if he did, I don't think this is the application. Matthew 11:19 says this. It says, the Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they said, here is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners, but wisdom is proved right by her deeds. Now, if you go back one verse, what you find is, I love going to the word for answers like this.
Yeah, seriously.
For John came neither eating or drinking, and they said he has a demon. They said he came neither eating or drinking, and he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, here's a glutton and a drunkard and a friend of tax collectors and sinners, but wisdom is proved right by her deeds. I don't know how you get around that. I think it leaves the door open for the possibility, but here's my answer. My answer is, if people are looking into that specifically that hard,
right,
you have to ask yourself, why does it matter to you to that degree, right? And that's anything. Did Jesus ever say swear words? I instantly know that you're struggling with your language, right?
Yeah.
And not only struggling with your language, you yourself feel some type of way about it, or else that question doesn't come up, right? And so I think anytime people are like, just, did Jesus do that? Can I do that? Well, hey, what's the motivator behind that question? If there's a motivation behind that question, that is generally conviction of God going like, hey, this is something I want you to be aware of. And as people, the first thing we try to do is justify it. Instead of going, God, what are you dealing with me about? Because there were people that took the vow that said, I'll never drink alcohol, I'll never cut my hair, I'll never, Samson, you look at Samson's vow and stuff like that. And so, I mean, anytime you get like really, really hyper about specifics, anything, doesn't matter what it is. I've had people like, well, what about like in the Old Testament, like people had like lots of wives and like, okay, listen, if you're looking for a way around something, that is the issue, not the issue itself, because I mean, anything is legal, with, you know what I mean? Like but not everything's permissible. Not everything's beneficial.
Exactly.
And like I said, the pastor in me, when somebody goes, did you just drink? I'm like, is God dealing with you about something?
Yeah. It's like, what's going on?
Yeah. And usually it's either that they've got a drinking thing that they're working with, or they don't drink at all, and they've got a pride issue they're dealing with because they want everybody to know that they're better than them. And like, at very least, you're going to dig in there and you're going to find more about Jesus. The question is going to drive more of a Jesus concept.
Which, there you go. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
What is the most impactful thing the church can do in today's environment? So with what's going on today, just, day-to-day stuff, what can the church do to benefit people?
I struggle. I mean, I'm the pastor of a church, and I don't even like church stuff, right? And like, that's not news. Everybody sorry if I just disappointed somebody, but I think listen is a big part of it. Willingness to listen. Obviously to us, making sure that there is a sustainable supply of lean beef available in our food banks. Do you know that in Crook County and Deschutes County, when there was a beef shortage and you went to Costco and they'd only sell you one meat item, there's a beef shortage during the COVID thing. Do you know the one place that was not experiencing a beef shortage in our area was food banks? And it was because we were giving them so much hamburger. To me, if somebody were to go, why does the church exist? I'm like, well, are we talking about spiritually, or are we talking about just practically? Because the church exists practically to reach felt needs. Now, if we do a good job reaching someone's felt need, then we pray that God will give us the opportunity to speak to someone at a spiritual level. But if we don't get that, we don't withdraw from the felt need. I mean, look at Jesus. There were so many times where Jesus would heal somebody and they'd take off and he'd never see him again. Or he'd feed people, and when he was preaching to them and they're like, we're hungry, and he'd feed them, and he didn't follow it up with, now here's what I want to see from you. He would feed them. Think about this. He would feed the 5,000, but he would teach the lesson to the disciples. So the 5,000, they got a sermon and food, but the disciples got the real one-on-one type stuff, the parables and the explanations and things like that. And so to answer your question, I mean, I'm always kind of going through this guilt trip. I mean, there's two things that cause me guilt in my life, and that is parenting and pastoring. Because you're always like, am I doing enough? Am I doing right? And I am so under ambitious about trying to cram my theology down people's throats. Did the plant die? Fun fact, Beth, the plant cannot die. It's actually sitting over there. So yeah, I think being available for felt needs to the community, teaching the gospel within the four walls. I mean, creating a community where people know the expectation or the standards of what it means to say yes to the concept of Jesus. And beyond that, I mean, I'm going to tell you, I could get more money and we could get more people, guaranteed. But to do it, we would have to change from what I feel called to more of a what I would call it like a religious concept that has to deal more in fear. Right now, you could exploit people's fear. And I feel very strongly that we are just called to continue doing what we're doing.
I mean, just walk around. I mean, if you're a leader in a church somewhere, just walk around your community. I'm sure you'll have some ideas. I
Yeah.
mean, that's
That's
what
the
we
same
do.
thing I'll tell my kids. Like, hey, if you want to have a job, go find a problem.
Right.
Go find a problem. And if you can find a problem and you can be the solution to the problem, the world will make room for you. Not only will they make room for you, they'll pay you to exist.
Yeah.
If you can be the solution to a problem that everybody feels. You know, and they say that crime rate is always directly connected to poverty. Like where there is poverty, there are crime rates. And so if a church can come in and begin to minister to the felt needs of the people that are struggling in their area, what they're doing is they are doing their best to mitigate the potential for a crime. Now, it's still going to happen. I mean, there's going to be other, factors that are involved, but if at very least people are feeling loved and like that who they are matter.
Right.
I mean, you're helping I'm sorry, I'm trying to read at the same time. Best thing we can do is love others. Yeah. And I think, so like I said, if you want people to feel loved, you have to reach their felt need.
Right.
Nobody feels loved when they come in with an actual need, like they've got a drug problem, but today their baby is hungry and needs diapers. And you go, well, why is your baby hungry? Well, why does your baby need diapers?
Yeah.
That doesn't feel like love. Even if what you're doing is right, even if what you're saying is true, love is reaching someone at a felt need level and winning people over that way. And the hope is that they go, what's this about?
Yeah. We just had Independence Day, and there are stories that during the Revolutionary War, pastors would give opinions. Some would support independence, and others would advocate for the loyalty to King George. Is there a biblical view of government? If so, what is it?
I have said this, and I meant it, that when someone says the words Black Lives Matter, that my perspective is we agree.
Right.
To the statement. And I've been almost appalled at how many people in church leadership have thrown all of their weight and all of their support behind political movements. They're like, no, wait, hang on a minute. Hold on a minute. We're on the side of loving people. I feel like we are field medics, and you got to understand that my personality is that I am a competitive person. I'm fine with conflict. I'm fine with debates. I'm the most comfortable in conflict.
Right.
Like I'm a climber. It goes against my human nature to say we're field medics that are called to love people and make Jesus available so that they can build their foundation on a rock instead of a political sandbox. Right? So when a pastor tries to make their entire gospel message, I'm calling him by name. I will say it out loud. I think that Franklin Graham has made a huge error by taking what he teaches and making it a political thing. Okay. That's sand. And I know there are people that love what he says, and I know he does a lot of good. But he does a lot of good. I'm not saying that he doesn't.
Right.
But every time you hear him talking, it's like political this, political that. I mean, and I'm like, dude, you've got to set the gospel on the foundation of Jesus that loves people. Because if you'll keep in mind, they crucified Jesus because he wouldn't play along politically.
Right. Yeah.
That's what put Jesus on the cross. That's what caused Rome to put Jesus on the cross to the Jews. I mean, that's what it was. It was politically driven. So when someone decides that in the church, we're going to take up a political, saber rattling, I see an opportunity. And like I said, you got to understand, my nature is, I don't mind conflict at all. I have to be careful that I'm nice. I have to, it's something I have to be disciplined to be nice.
Right.
So I'm saying I'm a field medic, and I'm like, ugh, that's not the thing that I love, but I still believe that to be true. Would colored lives matter be more accurate but too inclusive? Scott Johnson. Would colored lives matter be more accurate but too inclusive? Like I said, I think that when there's intentional duality, what I mean by that is when something is dual meaning intentionally, where you can say, well, all lives matter. Well, wait a minute. Are you arguing against Black Lives Matter? Right. Because you only know the honest application of that. And if somebody were to go, Black Lives Matter, well, are you saying that in response to all lives matter? Because that would sound like specifically only Black Lives Matter. No, that's not what I'm saying. Like, I know. But when things are intentionally ambiguous, it allows you to fight for your side without being necessarily named or targeted for having an opinion.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And I don't know. I mean, I think that people are probably going to listen more to what we do than what we say at this point. You know, I mean, I'm so just sick of the conflict. I mean, I don't know if I have a good answer for that one, Scott. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, who's excluded from that? You know, if you say that I love people and they go, well, we feel like you're not, acknowledging our cause. What would that look like? What would it look like for me to acknowledge a cause and do my part and love people that need loved? That's what I want. That's what I want to do. So my answer would be, I'm open to the conversation. I'm not open to the organization of what's going on. You know, the structure of Black Lives Matter, but they named the organization a statement that I agree with. That's like saying love people. Okay, right. Love people. Are you for loving people? Oh, but by the way, they're supporting a Marxist agenda. But do you love people? And you're like, I don't love people. Dang it.
I'm leaving. So going back to...
I think you're a great debater. You're good at this and on the spot interviewing. Oh, thanks, Valerie. My opinion, all lives matter is a given. Black lives matter are the ones that need all the lives to support them. If they feel like that right now what they're saying isn't being heard, I want to hear it. That's my goal. If somebody says that Black lives matter, and I want to know that that's true, I want to know. It's kind of like, for instance, no justice, no peace.
Okay.
Two ways of taking that. You can say, if you don't give us justice, then you get no peace. And you're like, well, that sounds militant. They're like, nope, that's not what I said. That unless there's justice, how could there be peace? I'm like, okay, that wouldn't make sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it just feels like it's full of opportunity to misunderstand the point. My wife just sent me a text message 12 minutes ago.
So going back to, is there a biblical view of government? I was thinking when that came in of, the kind of going back to the first question of, or the second question of foundations to like live by.
Yeah.
Meaning if you're a leader in that position, what are you going by? Are you just trying to get reelected?
Right. So it's hard for us because we live in a democracy, but we serve in a kingdom. Like biblically, we're called to live in a kingdom. And that's what's so nerve-wracking to me is people are like, democracy's not working. We need a different structure. And it's like, well, okay, is it going to allow us? My hope is we get to continue living a system that allows us to freely follow who Jesus is accurately, like with the freedom without it costing me the things. But I mean, so in my mind, the most effective human government is a democracy because there is freedom. There is freedom. There's freedom to choose who you follow and how you practice and your faith and things like that. So in my mind, the best we can hope for is a human democracy, which says we'll stay out of it because when people get involved, we mess everything up. We mess everything up. You give anybody too much power and it gets wonky. So best political structure, hopefully a church that says we are being called to a higher. What if the law was love? What if the U.S. law was love? You imagine how quickly the lawyers would mess that up?
Yeah. Is there a difference between government and politics?
Yeah, you got to have structure,
right.
I think. I think that we're doing the best we can. And I think that as long as we continue to support a structure that allows freedom and equality, that's what I'm for. Yeah. I'm for equality. And to be clear, it feels like we're kind of staying political tonight, but
yeah, it wasn't supposed to go that way.
But like equality of outcome, how are you gonna dictate that? Equality of opportunity, yeah. But spiritually, my thought is everybody has an equal opportunity because of who Jesus is. Jesus is the ultimate equalizer. He calls us to something so much more, and he calls us to be a living sacrifice. Imagine a governmental system that says you have to be a living sacrifice. Nope, I'm out.
Yeah.
So you're not going to create a human structure that says live as a human sacrifice. Sounds gross. It's supposed to. It's supposed to get your attention. I'm like, oh, what? A living sacrifice? A living sacrifice. That's important. So equality of opportunity says that you are free to pursue what God is calling you to because in that, you're going to be the most fulfilled. He didn't put you in a position that he can't overcome. God didn't put anybody in a position where, I'd love to make you successful, but my hands are handcuffed here. Yeah. Imagine the freedom if everybody understood that their choices mattered and counted. Yeah. Imagine that. Imagine if they said, my choices matter. Imagine if God got through to everybody in every situation and said, my choices matter, that I'm equally as advantaged to accomplish what God has me to accomplish. Maybe not the American dream. Maybe not the same ambition level as someone else, maybe not the same physical ability as someone else, maybe not the same IQ as everybody else, maybe not the same financial potential as everyone. Scrap all that. God can fulfill me and use me, and I can be purposeful in the kingdom.
Yeah.
That's the kind of government that I think would be best case scenario, is freedom to pursue Jesus in a way that fulfills your life. Now, there's a secular government that's going to be hard to instill.
Right. What would it look like if Jesus came back? Would we be able to would we be able to believe it with the advance of technology? So I was thinking, man, with the way people edit videos and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, if Jesus just was right there, would we be like,
Okay, so there's two people. There's two men, an alcoholic and someone who doesn't drink at all. They go to the first guy. He's an alcoholic. Life is out of control. And they said, "Why do you drink?" And he goes, "That's what my dad did."
okay,
They go to the second guy. He doesn't drink at all. And they go, "Why don't you drink?" He goes, "Because my dad drank." See, same circumstances, different outcomes.
okay,
Right. And so when you look at what I'm trying to remember how to connect the dots here on this one, but life is not about, if Jesus was here today, it's not about what he would accomplish. There are people that would believe based on belief, and there will be people that will not believe because unbelief is also just as active. We think that unbelief is it's a container that hasn't been filled yet. Unbelief is the lack of something. But the Bible talks about an unbelief that's not passive at all. It's active. It says, no matter what proof you give to me, I could watch someone's hand grow back, and I would think of a justification to continue believing the way that I believe, even though somebody in the exact same circumstance can see the same thing and their life be changed. See what I mean? And Jesus says it's your unbelief. It's your active unbelief, your unwillingness that says, I can take all of the evidence and I need more proof. And Jesus goes, so why am I going to waste my time? No amount. If miracles that have been done here have been done in Tyre and Sidon, like he's saying, no matter what I do, no matter what I say, no matter what I accomplish, your unbelief says, I can accept that. Give me more. I need more proof, more proof, more proof. And then he goes, you know what? Jesus just didn't give me enough proof. I drink because my dad drank. I don't drink because my dad drank. It's the same exact life scenario with two separate outcomes. That generally our belief is based on our own bias. There are people that have it bad that believe in Jesus. There's people that have it bad that don't. There's people that have it good, same thing. So if Jesus was here today, I think what you'd have is you'd have people in church. There's people that are like all in, and I think you'd still have people that are like,
right,
snake oil.
Interesting.
I think it'd be exactly, honestly, I think if Jesus were here today, it'd probably be real similar to what it is right now. I mean, it's Jesus. I don't think you could say it wouldn't have an impact or an effect, but I tell you who would be speaking out against him.
Do tell.
Pastors who believe that private jets indicate favor.
Okay.
Now, let me explain how I mean that. I'm not saying pastors who have private jets. I don't care, whatever.
Right.
But pastors who connect the private jet with specifically God's preferential favor, I think they would have a really hard time with Jesus.
Yeah, I can see that.
I
would have a hard time.
I don't
with
think
them.
Jesus. I don't think Jesus would have. I don't know. I don't feel like that Jesus would run into as much pushback from people on the streets as he would from people in the churches, based on what history told us about who he was. I think the churches would have a bigger problem with Jesus than people who are looking for answers. Now, the streets have become the most religious place in the U.S.
Yeah.
They are the most religious. They are devout. They are serious. They don't joke. It can't be joked about. I don't think religious people would super dig Jesus, but I think people who genuinely want answers would just be drawn to him.
Yeah. I mean, I find myself in weird YouTube rabbit holes about what were the pyramids made for and so on and so forth. So I know I would be
I
tuned.
hope when we get to heaven, Jesus is just laughing. He's like, you like those pyramids? He's
Yeah.
like, yeah, what was that about? He's like, oh, that was part of the creation of the earth.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I honestly.
What?
Yeah. I just can't. I hope there's a movie theater with a disc that you can just make your own movies and be like, what were the pyramids? How were they made? And just put it in and watch. I would just sit there for eternity, I guess.
Yeah, and the fact that it's all going to end. I mean, what has happened isn't nearly as amazing as what's going to happen. That there is an end date. that there is a date, then all of this ends, and you start looking at the prophecy of what would have to happen. How interesting that people are like, the Bible's wrong. Israel doesn't exist anymore. No more Israel. 1947, Israel becomes a country, and they're like, scratch the record. What?
Yeah.
So the things that are coming in are far more amazing than things that have already happened.
I can't wait.
I agree with you that churches would miss Jesus, but people on the streets would embrace him. Does that reveal my Catholic background? Oh, you know what I love, Jessica? You're not alone in this. We've got a lot of Catholics that come to this church.
Yeah.
The one thing they hold, almost all, there's some exceptions, almost all the Catholics that come to the church, you know what they have in common?
What?
They all tell me that they were Catholic. And I'm like, awesome. And they're like, I'm staying Catholic. I'm like, great, you can stay
Do
Catholic.
whatever you want.
Nobody walks in and goes, I'm a Methodist. It's just for some reason specifically, that's one of the things.
Interesting. Huh. Well, that was all of them. That was that. I thoroughly enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
Because I put some questions in there, I'll be honest, because I was curious. And it turned out wonderful.
I'm going to have to start getting your questions pre-approved, because there's times you ask me questions I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we can figure that out. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Not a question, but happy almost birthday, Mary and Jacob. Oh, what would Jesus think about our world today? I think he would love us, Gladys. I think he would love people. I think he would sit and listen to people that are screaming and yelling, be like, oh, I hear you. Yeah, interesting. I think he'd listen to people in the church and be like, yep. And I think he would I think he would love people. Now, the problem is sometimes when you love people, they don't always love you back. I get it, but I think he'd love it. I think he would love the world today. I think he'd be heartbroken by the pain that we're causing each other, but he would see it's like your kids fighting. If I walked in and my kids were fighting, I would be like, what is going on? Like, I want to address the problem, but never does it affect how I feel about my kids, right? And so I think that would be Jesus. I think he'd be like, oh man, you guys need to clean up your room, but
yeah, we'll start cleaning, everyone.
Yeah, if Jesus came back right now, he may not even come to the U.S. He might go somewhere like,
that's a good point.
Honestly, like Venezuela.
Why do we think he would? I don't know.
Yeah. How do we know he doesn't? Hey, I said I was a recovering Catholic. That's not what I meant, Tracy. There's a lot of people that stay Catholic, and it's 100% fine. I love it. I love it. I tell you what, the Catholics are some of the most faithful people. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that are like, they are in church every week. They are hands down some of the most faithful people at the church. So I meant absolutely no disrespect with that at all. I love it. Yeah. So
hug a Catholic.
Hug a Catholic.
Guys, have a great day. Bye for now.